Well, we are now on the halfway point of MLP Season 6, and I've got to say, it is slightly disappointing. Now, don't get me wrong, I do really like the first half of the season. It's just that it hasn't really been leaving much of a lasting impact on me, unlike, say, the best of Seasons 4 and 5. Now, since we will be on hiatus again, I've decided to look at each of these episodes and get my opinion on all of them. And since I did this type of thing last year with Season 5, I might as well do it again. And this will also be a little bit of a warm-up for my every episode of Season 1 of Powerpuff Girls reboot reviewed. I really need to get to watching those episodes, though. I've been slacking on that. I will get out by mid-July to make my 2-year anniversary. But also, a couple more things before I begin. For those new to my channel, I record on an iPhone which has a 10-minute video limit, so if there's like a jump between around that point of me recording, you know why. Also, if you want to read the text version of this review, just go to the link in the description. Now, with all of that said, I'm out of breath. But let's get on with the review anyways. First, let's begin with the 2-part season premiere, The Crystalline. One issue that I do have with this episode is how it balances the two main plots of the episode between, Sunburst, Starlight, that plot, and the Crystal Heart and the baby and whatnot on that side of the plot. I mean, they're both good, but they not as great as they could be. They both aren't given really enough screen time to really shine. And there isn't really much else really that's wrong with the episode. I do like it. I especially love seeing sleep-deprived Shining Armor and Cadence finally getting them some character and just not being bland. Also, their baby, Alicorn Flurry Heart, is pretty cute. And the scenes with her and her uncontrollable magic are pretty funny. I love seeing Sunburst and Starlight's relationship too. I mean, they really do work off each other very well. The action scenes were great, especially with Celestia and Luna actually doing something, which is a nice change of pace, and I do really like it, and I welcome it. I do hope that we get something more with that supposed shadow of the Changeling at the end flying towards Crystal Empire. Hopefully, we get something more with that. However, with all those good things said, this was one of the weaker season premieres, due to not really keeping me fully interested the whole way through, and the two plots not really reaching their fullest potential. It was still good on pretty much every level, from story to characters, humor, and moral, but whatever. Next is The Gift of Maud Pie. Now, one thing I don't like about this episode is most of the first act. I mean, it was kind of boring. I mean, this sums it up pretty well. Pinkie, Rarity, and Maud go to a location. Pinkie has trouble controlling herself and not spoiling what she's getting from Maud for her present. She fires a party cannon. Next scene. It's repeated several times and it's pretty repetitive, and the joke gets old pretty quickly. Now, the rest of the episode definitely really picks up in the entertainment section, because this episode is really funny after that. My favorite joke has to be when Rarity starts acting like Pinkie Pie for one scene, pretending to be like her, and that was really funny, especially seeing her sort of bounce off the walls everywhere. And I will say that if you don't like Maud and or dry humor that comes with her episodes, then you probably won't like a lot of the humor in this episode, or the episode in general. And yeah, the episode is a spin on the Gift of Magi storyline, which does make some parts pretty predictable. Like Pinkie giving up her party cannon and Maud trading her new item to give it back. I will say the trading back scene was really funny with that New Yorker stereotype pony freaking out over everything. That was really funny. But as far as the predictability goes, I am able to forgive it in this episode due to having enjoyed at least most of it. It was a pretty good episode. Now we're on episode 4, On Your Marks. This episode is definitely a great follow-up to the Crusaders of the Lost Mark. I mean, this is exactly how I wanted sort of the CMC's story to progress. I mean, seeing how they're trying to find other stuff to do now they don't have to look for their special talent and getting a cutie mark. Now that's over with. And we also get to see how the plot for this group of kids will be in the future, with them solving cutie mark problems and whatnot, which is pretty nice. And, I don't really have anything to say about this episode. It was pretty good. It wasn't boring or anything. Just not much really happened that interested me. I mean, at the beginning of the episode, I was kind of excited, but by the end, it just wasn't there anymore. One problem I do have with this episode is how they state the moral at the end. It just feels so forced and unnatural how the CMC just outright state moral, pretty much just blatantly. It's too blatant. I know it isn't just with this episode. They've sort of, a lot of episodes in the past have done this before, but it feels kind of worse here. Pretty much just, this is the moral! You learn this now! That's pretty much what happened, how I feel with that. It is a pet peeve of mine with this show, with how they just blatantly state morals for the younger demographic. I don't really like that. Just a personal opinion. Now, it's time to give Spike some love with episode 5, Gauntlet of Fire. Honestly, before watching this episode, I was pretty worried that this would have been as bad as Dragon Quest, the last Dragon-centered episode and my least favorite episode of the entire fucking series. Well, I was dead wrong in my thoughts because this episode was great. Like, definitely the best of the season. I mean, while the past episode was a racist shit of an episode that said all dragons are terrible based on one little group, this latest one shows that not all of them are terrible, which Dragon Quest should have done in the first place, too. One thing that I do wish this episode would do is pull a magical mystery cure and give Spike wings when he grabs the staff at the end. That would have been kind of funny and nice to see. But that doesn't really hinder the episode. That's just a personal thing. Now, I can't really find anything really bad with this episode. Most of it was really damn near perfect. Sure, Gargle shows up again from the past Dragon Quest episode. Still the same one-note terrible antagonist. But hey, at least he gets the shit beat out of him. That's great to see, right? Wait, it was really funny. And I also like how Twilight and Rarity sort of kind of represent us as the audience. I mean, I really like seeing that, especially with the line pretty much saying, "How did you get ahead of us?" I like that line because that's kind of how we are with viewing the episode. All the action scenes are a lot of fun to watch and are very well animated. The moral is pretty good too. Ember is also a great character, and I hope we see more of her later. There is a lot of potential with the dragons and more story from that. Overall, this is definitely going to be one of my favorite episodes from this season, even after the second half of the season appears. Now here's the great and powerful episode 6, No Second Prances. Ah yes, Trixie's Return episode, which ended up being one of season 6's best episodes. This was really good. Starlight, Trixie, and Twilight are all at their best here. The relationship between Starlight and Trixie is just great. These two are really made for each other, especially with their backstory and whatnot for both of them. I mean, everything's great, from Starlight trying to find a friend but failing, which is pretty funny, to Twilight's suspicions of Trixie when her and Starlight start hanging out, and the events that transpired before and during Trixie's magic show were all fantastic. Definitely during that ending, the third act, the emotions and words are exactly how they should be. And the humor is really top-notch here in this episode. When there is some jokes in the episode, they do very well. The only thing I don't like in this episode was Celestia and her little bit of thing. Whatever. She just gave off this presence of, oh god, I really don't want to be here. Which kind of bugged me. Other than that, this was a great episode. Definitely Trixie's best episode. Better than Magic Duel. I will say this. Before Season 6 started, it was obvious that people were skeptical about Starlight's inclusion with the main cast, including me. And I've got to say, after this episode, I can't see how anyone can dislike her now. And now, we move on to Newbie Dash. Here we go, straight from two of the best Season 6 episodes to one of the worst. Yeah, I think this is a bad episode, and the inconsistent episode quality of this show is still my biggest problem, and I'm really getting to hate it. It's getting really annoying. Okay, why is it that the first episode that I find bad from the past couple of seasons are all Rainbow Dash episodes, despite her being my favorite of the main 6. God damn it. Season 4 was Rainbow Falls, Season 5, Thanks for Memories, and Season 6, this one. To give this episode credit, it is nowhere near as bad as those episodes, since I can at least understand where the people who like it are coming from. If you don't like this episode, that's perfectly fine. I mean, the problem I have is that there's just so much cringe in this episode, from Rainbow's constant mistreatment, to her pretending to be like the rest of the main 6, as a couple examples. Seriously, that joke was the worst moment in this whole episode. It's painfully unfunny, and it drags on for way too long. I mean, I really don't understand why the writers make Rainbow Dash a complete idiot for no reason. It's not funny, and it makes her really unrelatable. I mean, this is the same problem I had with Thanks for Memories. Also, why is she such a clumsy, awful flyer all of a sudden? I mean, she's flown well with the Wonderbolts in the past. What gives this episode an excuse? This is just another episode that makes me never want to see the Wonderbolts again. I'm getting really tired of seeing these guys. I really don't like them. I mean, I can understand what the moral was trying to go for, but it really needs some fixing, along with the rest of the third act of this episode. But for now, just skip it. Well, it's time for Christmas. In May. Or June. What would he fucking do? I guess for this reason, that's why this episode makes my list of the ones that I want to like more than I do. Okay, this episode isn't bad. It is pretty nice. I mean, if you've seen A Christmas Carol, then you know what's going to happen. Sadly, the 22-minute time limit really makes this episode not as good as it could have been. I mean, I'm just not in the mood for another holiday episode, especially seeing as we already had one in the rear end of Season 5. I mean, it's just too close to each other. And in the middle of the spring and summer, I'm not in the mood to see this episode. I mean, with all that said, it is a good episode, I will say that. I mean, the music definitely is fantastic. It's a musical episode. I mean, the songs remind me that makes me feel like I'm watching the Muppets Christmas Carol. How that went. My favorite song has to be Luna's song. And I can't think of any of them that I can cut out for being not liking or just wasting time. I mean, that's a good story, moral, the characters fit well into their assigned roles. I like how Spike, he was pretty funny when he kept interrupting when the story being told. This was another good one. Another good episode. I just don't have much else to say about it. And this isn't the best time for this episode, sadly. Now here's episode 9, the Saddle Row Review, aka the funniest episode of Season 6. Seriously, this show has not made me laugh my ass off in a long time like this. This was a really funny episode. I mean, just the way, also I can't talk right now. Just how the episode bounces from the characters during the interview to showing what happened was done very well. Story and entertainment-wise, I can't even think of one joke that was the best. Alright, maybe the Twilight and her doing that sweep, sweep, sweep along to that beat that was going on. Now it's really funny. Also how Rainbow Dash, Applejack, and everyone else started doing it with her, despite them thinking it was stupid. That was funny. Each member of the main 6 gets their own time to shine, and it's done very well. One problem I do have is that Spike's exclusion. Why isn't he here? It's helping Rarity out. You think he would be the first one to help her. But no. That's one problem I do have with the episode, and the moral is pretty good too. I really like it. Overall, another good episode. Now we're at episode 10, Applejack's Day Off, and the episode was, not very memorable or very interesting. It was pretty boring. It's just, not much really stands out about this episode. I mean, I can't call it bad, since there was a few funny moments, and the moral was pretty good and very well executed. I can barely remember what happens in this episode, especially since some scenes dragged on for way too long, like the whole following the pipe scene. I mean, Applejack and Rarity have had better episodes where they are able to bounce off each other, much more entertaining and interesting. This episode wasn't bad, just meh, and I don't really have much else to say about it, sadly. Well, we're almost done. Episode 11, Flutter Brudder. Now, this episode really hit home for me. I mean, you see, I just graduated from high school, and I don't really have anything to do until I go to college. I don't even have a job or anything. I applied, but I haven't heard anything back. And I can't help but kind of see myself in Zephyr's place, even though he's 100 times worse than me. I guess what I'm trying to say, I can see myself kind of going through a few of the mental things that he's going through. Not as exaggerated, though. He is a good character, although at the beginning he can be a little bit annoying and a bit of a dick. I mean, one pet peeve of mine is that I really don't like guys who just keep hitting on girls who are obviously show no interest in them. I find it pretty annoying, and especially in this episode with him constantly hitting on Rainbow. It's just annoying to me, not really funny. I did end up liking him in the end, although not as much as I would have liked to. Also, Fluttershy was great in this one. I mean, she's definitely the best, one of her best appearances in the show. And the moral is done very well, making this a great lesson for adults. I mean, we can't just give up on something because it's hard. We won't accomplish anything in life if we have that mental thought process. Most of the humor was also pretty good too. And the best joke probably coming from Fluttershy being peeved. I will say that was a pretty cute moment and pretty funny. She really is the best character to do this type of story, and I am glad to see more family members showing up in this show. Overall, another great entry. Finally, I am out of breath with how fast I'm going. But here we are, the last episode before the hiatus, Spice Up Your Life. Now, the conflict with this episode, that being the failing restaurant, trying to get a good review from a critic, and the father-daughter relationship, is very well handled. How Rarity and Pinkie think on how they should handle the issue and how they bounce off in conflict with each other is done really well. I really like how that is handled, and it does seem like it is handled very similar to Rainbow and Pinkie in A Lost Treasure of Griffinstone, like how Rainbow and Rarity take the position of thinking what seems to be the most sensible solution at the time, but they end up being most wrong, and they both end up learning more from Pinkie than the opposite, vice versa. It is handled well in both episodes with how it goes, but if the same type of thing happens again, I'm gonna start calling out the show for being lazy. My main issue with the episode, I will say, is with the food critic. I mean, she's not that good of an antagonist. She doesn't provide much to the episode, and she doesn't change at all. I mean, she just remains as stuck up at the end of the episode as she was right at the beginning. I mean, this kind of makes her a one-note antagonist. Although I do like how she kind of looks like and resembles the food critic from Ratatouille. I like that. This episode does show the wrong way of being a critic in general, not just with food, and I really like how it handles that. We're supposed to state our opinion on something, not to force others to follow those opinions or make others feel bad for not thinking the same thing as us. And I also like the ending with how it shows the other chefs in the sort of the town that weren't happy with how things were going. I really like that. Also, Gordon Ramsay cameo really fits well with the episode. Oh, I almost forgot. There's also the Link cameo in Flutterbutter. I did like that too. Overall, this was a pretty good episode, but I don't know, it didn't really leave a lasting impact on me when I finished. I felt like, after I turned the episode off, I was like, well, that happened. Not much else. And that was the first half of Season 6. And sadly, like I sort of just said, no episode really had a big impact on me. And we had some great episodes, but a lot of just okay ones. And one bad one and one that got pretty close to bad. My favorite episodes are Gauntlet of Fire, No Second Prances, The Sallow Row Review, and Flutterbutter. My least favorites are the bad episode Newbie Dash and the really boring, on the bad side of meh, but not a terrible episode, Applejack's Day Off. Well, what do you think of Season 6 so far? Do you love it, hate it, or like it? Like, comment, subscribe. See you later.